Now, game week 27 might have just begun, but in today's video, we're going to be running through my top transfer targets ahead of game week 28. Now, before we dive into today's video, of course, if you do enjoy any of the content that you see on the channel, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as we are trying to hit 12,500 subscribers by the end of the season, and it is only possible with your guys' amazing support. As always, with the transfer target section, I like to break it down just to the game week 28 fixtures. I think sometimes we can get lost looking a little bit further ahead, so I do just want to focus on game week 28. The important thing to note with this game week is it isn't just this weekend coming up. There's FA Cup this weekend, it is the following weekend up. So my number one advice, make early transfers. Leave it for as late as possible. We're going to have FA Cup fixtures where, of course, players can pick up injuries. Then we have Champions League next midweek as well. Then we go into the Premier League round. So my advice is just to leave it for now. Don't make any transfers. There's obviously a lot of games for a lot of players coming up. So just be cautious. Let them get out of the way before making your moves ahead of game week 28. But looking at the fixtures themselves, obviously it's going to be Mohamed Salah captain, you imagine, for most people with Southampton. Again, another poor showing from them tonight against Chelsea. Really strong projected goals numbers here from the Fantasy Football Hub ones. I imagine when the Rob T FPL betting one comes out as well, they're going to be even higher. A decent fixture as well for Chelsea as well. Another opportunity to potentially go with Cole Palmer as captain, but I think most people are going to go with Mohamed Salah, of course, with Southampton as well. Palace against Ipswich is also going to be a great fixture for the people that have got Munoz or Mateta, two players we are going to talk about within this video as well. We're also seeing a decent run of fixtures coming up for Wolves as well, so Mateus Cunha might potentially become a decent option over the next few weeks. In terms of the early kickoff as well, I think that could be a really exciting fixture, with both teams kind of, I would say, at the similar point where they're winning games, they're scoring goals, they're conceding quite a lot of goals at the moment. Could be a really exciting and interesting game. What I wanted to point out before we move on to the projected data is, of course, blank game week 29. If you've not checked the FDR or looked that far ahead with your team, there are going to be some of your players within the next few weeks that are blanking. And in game week 29, we have Aston Villa and Liverpool, Newcastle and Crystal Palace. Now, some of you might be thinking, right, this is the time to be obviously playing that free hit chip. That's not going to be the strategy I'm going to recommend for most people. I think playing it in 34 is going to be the more optimal one, because obviously I think the ideal situation is you wildcard in 30 or 31. Then, of course, you can triple captain Isaac in 32 if you've still got that left, or play the bench boost. Then attack the double in 33. Then, of course, free hit in 34. Come out the other side with your team still in a pretty decent shape. Whereas if you're going into that with no free hit because you've used it in 29, I feel you're going to be quite a big disadvantage to most other FPL managers. Now, obviously, the reason I've included this is just to make you aware when you are bringing in players. So over the next few weeks, I wouldn't be looking to bring in any Newcastle, Palace, Villa or Liverpool players for me if I'm trying to avoid that free hit in 29. All the rest are really good options. I think obviously Wolves players we're definitely going to be looking at over the next few weeks, with them of course having Southampton within that blank week is a really good fixture. Obviously, you know, Manchester United players, obviously Erling Haaland potentially could be back in the fray as well with a decent fixture against Brighton. So there's some interesting players we need to be thinking about, and there's obviously some that we need to be avoiding and some teams we need to be avoiding over the next few weeks. Let's move on then. Let's take a look at the projected data from 11ify. Starting off first with the clean sheets over the next 5 game weeks. I think investment into the Arsenal defence could be a real worthwhile move. I know, you know, they've obviously had some recent poor results, obviously the West Ham one being the big example, but there's still a really good defence, still one of the best sides for XG conceded, not only over the course of the season, but over the past 10 game weeks as well. The 11ify numbers are looking really decent, and I think an easy switch that you could make in 29, of course, would be dropping Trent Alexander-Arnold out, and maybe potentially looking at, looking at a Gabriel, a Saliba. Obviously, if you've got Alisson, a switch to Raya as well. With those obviously decent clean sheet opportunities over the 28 and 29 could also be an option. Obviously, we can see here Liverpool with the blank in 29. City's fixtures as well. Obviously, defensively, they've left quite a few question marks this season. Haven't been one of the top sides for XG conceded. However, somebody I think like a Gavardiol, who still is one of the top scoring defenders within the game this year, could be a decent shout over the next few weeks. It's a real shame Palace have obviously obviously got that blank in 29, but if you are planning on free hitting, somebody like Munoz, I think could be a great pickup. No player, or no defender, should I say, has scored more points over the past 7 game weeks than him. Ipswich up next, and then they've got, I think it's either Southampton or Leicester in 30. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. Wolves as well, their fixtures, as you can see, start to pick up. So I think 8 Nuri train will definitely start to build some more momentum over the next few weeks as well. And obviously Newcastle players, again, probably not going to be ones that you wanted to bring in with the next few weeks, but definitely going to be targeting on that wild card going a little bit further forward in my personal opinion. Let's move on then. Let's take a look at the projected numbers from the projected goal numbers, should I say, sorry, from 11FI. Again, Liverpool, really, really strong numbers next week, so I think Salah captain is going to be the way to go for most people. I do feel if you've got the Liverpool attackers, definitely worth just continuing with them. We're also seeing a big upturn in terms of those projected numbers for City, so the likes of Marmoush, Haaland, Gavardio, definitely going to be on our radars as well. Could be a decent captaincy option with the best projected goal numbers as well in match day 29 and in match day 30 as well. So Haaland could be re-entering our thought processes right before we wildcard in game week 31. Definitely an interesting one. Obviously, Chelsea, another decent fixture next week. Game week 30 as well, some pretty decent projected numbers across the board there. Newcastle, not going to be looking to bring their players in this week. However, definitely worth, I would say, maybe keeping Alexander Isak, especially if you bought him early. You've got a lot of budget obviously built into him. You don't really want to lose that. They've got good numbers going forward, and that doesn't even factor in on 32. The second game going into that double game week as well. So, you know, pretty steady numbers across the board. Bournemouth players, still, I think, could be worth a little bit of investment if you've got, obviously, you know, a Cliver, a Semenyo, somebody like that. I don't think Dango is going to be the player with Evan Nielsen now back and slowly managing his minutes, but still some pretty decent numbers and a good fixture in match day 30 as well. So you'd get the 29 fixture and you'd also get the match day 30 fixture. We're starting to see a little bit of an uptick as well for Wolves. Obviously, their big standout fixture is going to be the 29 one against Southampton, and I do feel like Mateta Cunha is going to be a very, very popular man over the next few game weeks. Moving into 2 players that I think could be very, very popular in demand, especially if you're looking to free hit in 29. It is going to be Mateta and it is going to be Munoz. Like I said at the start of the video, Munoz, one of the highest scoring defenders over the past 7 game weeks, even one of the highest scoring players over that period as well, has been absolutely killing it. And as you can see, Ipswich up next, a great fixture. And in game week 30, Southampton, 2 of the best fixtures you could be eyeing up. And like I said, of course, if you are planning on using the free hit in 29, I definitely think Crystal Palace players could be really, really interesting, especially if you're going to wildcard in game week 31. Obviously, Mateta has been on fire, as you can see, 5 attacking returns in 5 appearances. Good underlying data to go with that. And Crystal Palace at the moment are in real free flow. I'm really doing well, and I think Mateta is one of those forwards that I think I would love to have owned at some point this season. I definitely think it's still not out of the possibility to go and own him. However, my preferred strategy is not to use my free hit in 29. However, if you are planning on using it, I definitely think he could be a decent striker for game week 28 and for game week 30. Of course, if you are planning to hit that wildcard button as well. I think he probably will outscore the likes of Cunha, the likes of Chris Wood. Of course, even though they have a fixture in 29, I still think he'll probably outscore them both, considering how weak the next 2 opposition are in terms of XG conceded and how good Crystal Palace have been over kind of the past 10 game weeks or so, or pretty much since 2025. Glasner has got the team kicking again, and you know, they're looking really, really good at the moment. Daniel Munoz as well has been one of the main benefactors. It seems like everything that this lad touches at the moment is turning to gold, picking up assists, picking up goals, picking up clean sheets as well. He has been absolutely flying, really, really well with the points. And again, one of those players that just, if you've got him, I'm definitely planning on keeping him for game week 28. There's no way I'm going to sell him. But again, if I'm not going to be free hitting in 29, I would not be looking to bring him in. If I am free hitting him, I think I would be tempted as that 2-week punt against Ipswich and against Southampton. It really, really boils down to these 2, whether or not you are free hitting or not. Of course, if you are planning on using that free hit chip in game week 29, I think any investment into the Palace could be a really, really decent option. However, if you're not, I think for me, it is just going to be an avoid. That is the advice I'm going to give on those 2. Let's move on then to Mateta Cunha. Obviously, he's going to be a very, very popular pick over the next few game weeks. has been in pretty decent form. I thought he had an okay game against Fulham today as well. Obviously, prior to that, he had scored in all 3 of his last appearances, and he is one of those players that is a bonus point magnet. And what do I mean by that? Well, basically, players get rated on BPS, and that is the score you see if you click on like the information into the game. It'll be like 20, this player scored 20, this player scored 60. We usually see Mo Salah at the top with like an 80, and you might not know what that number means, but basically, their actions correlate to the bonus, right? That's how the game works. Cunha is one of those players that roughly averages, before doing anything like in terms of attacking involvement, around about 12, 13. You factor then in a goal for, of course, the players, you'd be looking then at like 26 for Matheus Cunha, just off the back of that. Plus that 13 probably puts him to 30, 40 in terms of the bonus point metrics. You factor that in then maybe like a close game, or he's scored the winning goal, he's probably going to come away with free bonus. And that is one of the main reasons I love him. Of course, he's a talisman as well on a lot of free kicks, on corners, on penalties. As you can see, he just loves to shoot as well from distance, but also within the box as well. And I do feel like, you know, sometimes he is one of those players that probably breaks the XG model, because just purely the volume of shots he's having, not always the best, but he is definitely capable of something magic. And I do feel the fixture in 29, of course, is absolutely gorgeous. But the 5 as a whole over the next 5 game weeks are also really, really good. And like I said, if you are planning on potentially not using your wildcard till maybe a little bit later on, or if you've already used up your wildcard or your second wildcard, I definitely think Cunha would be one of the players that is top of my shopping list. Obviously, Everton have been improved recently under Moyes, but Southampton the worst side for XG conceded. West Ham are down there, Ipswich are down there, and Tottenham are down there. All that to me, when I see a striker coming up against some of the worst sides for XG conceded, is a match made in heaven, and definitely a big investment point for me. Moving on to our next player and our final player of the video, it is going to be Erling Haaland, and I wanted to have a discussion around whether or not I do think it's going to be worth bringing him in and what potential sacrifice you are going to have to make. Now, I think for Game Week 29 and Game Week 30, he represents a really good captaincy option. Of course, there is no Mohamed Salah for Game Week 29, and that is one of the big things with premiums. Do they offer me a good captaincy option? And yes, Haaland does. Palmer doesn't in 29 with Arsenal for me. So I think if I was to get Erling Haaland in, it would require me personally for my team to drop Cole Palmer. Now, would I do that for 29? I think I probably would, because then we get the Leicester fixture as well in Game Week 30, where of course we would have Erling Haaland against one of the worst defences in the league. That all to me makes sense and seems like a really, really sensible thing to do. Now, if I would prefer him or Cunha, right now I still think I probably would select Cunha, but he's been doing exceptionally well and probably going a little bit under the radar, as you can see over the past 5 game weeks. He has managed to get himself 5 goal involvements, and his data's not been too bad as well. However, he is a little bit of a doubt heading into Game Week 27, so I do need to see him actually play some football. Of course, then Manchester City have the FA Cup. They don't have the Champions League midweek, so they'll be happy about that. Haaland will get a little bit of a break there. I don't think Forest is probably going to be the ideal hop-on point, with that being the early kickoff for me. But Brighton in 29, Leicester in 30, and obviously wildcarding in 31. I think it could be potentially time to bring back Erling Haaland for these 2 good fixtures, for the 2 home fixtures with the decent projected goal numbers, and the fact he could be a great captain for 29 and 30. I think it could be time to reinvest in Erling Haaland. Finishing up today's video then, let's take a look at the predicted points over the next 5 game weeks. Of course, Cole Palmer is going to be top. He has a fixture in 29, a decent fixture next week as well. Alexander Isak, no real surprise as well, with the double coming up for Newcastle in 32, despite the blank in 29 as well. Haaland, who we just spoke about, as you can see over the next 5 game weeks, is projected to actually outscore Mohamed Salah over that period, and I find that really, really interesting. Of course, Salah does have the blank, so that's probably going to be the big factor, but we are seeing a return to the top for Erling Haaland in terms of those predicted points. Cunha also features on this list as well. So does Mateta. Again, even with a blank, Mateta is still one of those players that is, of course, looking really, really decent towards the top end of this list as well. I think another player that's potentially going under the radar, and one we've not spoke about, is going to be Bruno Fernandes, with a decent fixture in 29, potential captaincy as well for that blank game week, so maybe one to potentially monitor over the next few weeks, or of course potentially to consider as well on a free hit. And then the final player I want to talk about from the predicted points was Chris Wood. I know he's not got the best fixture this week or in or in 27, but I still think he's a very, very easy player to keep hold of. With that Ipswich fixture in 29, I think Forest could have an absolute field day in the blank game week. I think a lot of people will have him on the free hit as well, and it wouldn't surprise me to see his effective ownership ridiculously high heading into that game week. So he would be a player that, yes, doesn't have the best fixture in 29, but I would still probably keep him for the upcoming weeks. That was my transfer targets ahead of game week 28. Let me know what you think of this down in the comment section. Of course, if you've got any questions about your team as well, get them in as we'll try to answer as many as we possibly can. But thank you for watching today, ladies and gentlemen, and good luck in game week 28.